Now, I've noticed that you're very passionate about cannabis, and I just was curious to get kind of your thoughts on the state of the cannabis industry and what you plan on doing in the future to counteract the state of cannabis. So I have a few questions and try and answer them the best that you can.
I guess the best way to start is, when did you first start growing?
Okay. I guess, well, I'm like an 80s baby, so I first started growing, I would say probably 1993. And it was just really popping seeds on my patio as a high schooler. And it wasn't really until I got about 19 that I actually was successful at growing.
What were you growing for?
Well, back then, I was really just growing for something to smoke, really. I mean, back in those days, you still got seeds and sticks in bags, so really wasn't, I guess, until about the late 90s, 2000, that actually, oh, this is blueberry or this is the Zona or something like that. A name was actually attached. I guess it was all Mexican brickweed for the most part, so as long as I could get free weed, that was really my aim in the beginning.
What are some of your favorite things to grow now?
Hazes, definitely, that's an easy one. I really like the cerebral up effects. So that's pretty much what I try to go for now. For about the past 6 years, I've been working on breeding a few strains of my own. I got some bag seed from Strawberry Haze, a bag seed from OG Kush, and have been working those lines, the F4 and breeding and mixing in Purple Haze and Original Haze, and basically adding to the back of my past work while going forward with different strains, different variations, different effects.
Why does modern cannabis suck to you?
Ooh, modern cannabis sucks. Modern cannabis sucks because I think honestly, whenever you put people in a position where they have to mass produce a product, quality is really going to go down. Another thing that makes it suck is just from grower to the shelf. I hear almost takes about a year, at least in California. That could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months, basically, to get your stuff from out of the field, processed, and onto the shelf. You're not getting the best terpenes. You're handling it a bunch of times. So by the end, when the customer's at the dispensary, they're not getting the best product at all. Always, when it's something like this, you're going to get cheating. Back in my day when it was illegal, they would spray weed with sugar water, and basically when it dried, the extra sugar molecule would add more weight to the overall poundage. So I'm sure it's going to be the same way when you're in a dispensary. I mean, we just went through labs fudging test numbers to give them higher THC numbers. So anything, how did my grandfather put this? A man can tell you he went anywhere if you didn't go with him. So as long as the door is closed on us with what's going on in the back kitchen, we're never going to know how the food is prepared. I'm a big advocate of growing your own because you know exactly what went into everything. That's probably the best way I would say to combat modern cannabis is grow your own and have some pride in it.
Name some breeders that inspired you.
Well, I think, of course, I would say really Neville Showmaker is probably the king of breeding. Not only did he have access at the time in the late 80s, early 90s. He was one of the few people I can name. There would be other people doing it, I guess, if there were more, but had different varieties of seeds and actually worked the lines to come up with something. He knew what he had. He was a dog breeder, and most of the people out here in the cannabis industry who are dog breeders come out with much better products. They have an idea of what they're doing to lock in the traits that they want and get rid of the traits they don't want. So that was an advantage I think he had, but everything that we are smoking now is off of his work. So I definitely say Neville was a huge inspiration. And it's kind of hard to find information out about these people. Me being a Hayes fan, I would have to throw the Hayes brothers in there, I guess, including saying the Skunkman, like it or not, he's part of history. And also, I'm really fascinated with Mr. Soul from Brothers Grimm. The Cinderella 99 story, the genius and everything, that's very interesting to me. So I would say he definitely inspired me.
Where do you see cannabis in the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, that's tough because I got to be quite honest. I never thought I'd see the day of legalization. So they got me on my back foot the whole time. But just from the climate I'm seeing with rescheduling and just different states being reluctant to, I guess, rec legal, other countries really aren't getting on board. I believe Germany kind of is, but France and other places have much. England don't really have that luxury. Honestly, in 10 years, I think probably we're not going to be allowed to home grow, and we're only going to be allowed to get dispensary weed. That's probably going to be where it's at. The government is going to control everything, tax everything. There's going to be ID codes on everything. Just heavily regulated, mediocre product is what I'm expecting cannabis to be in 10 years. It's going to go back into the black market the way it was when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s.
Okay, so if that's the case, could you tell me what's missing from the cannabis industry?
Well, shoot, what's missing, I think, honestly, is just passion. Education and passion is missing from the cannabis industry. You've got people who are just businessmen and don't really love cannabis. They don't even smoke their product. They just know it's got high profit margins. Education to the customer, to better let them understand things like the entourage effect with terpenes and how it interacts with your body. Your chemistry makes a big difference on something that works for this person probably won't work for you. Just the process of how the industry is going, how it's regulated from the farm all the way to the dispensary when you're buying it, so you understand kind of really what's going on. I understand it's kind of the same problem with our food. We don't understand like where our eggs come from in the grocery store, and I guess cannabis is the same way. But I think if education was more on the forefront, we would lose a lot of the prohibition stigma that we still have. People considering this an illicit drug more than a medicinal drug. And I get it. We bred for decades trying to basically boost the THC and losing a lot of the, I guess, medicinal benefits. But now that, say, Israel is on board, there's institutes that can study things a lot more, the CSI Humboldt. We probably can steer ourselves in a direction of more medicinal effects and this being an actual medicinal plant. Who else is doing things, CBD work, 3-to-1, 2-to-1, 4-to-1 ratios, meaning 4 THC to 1 CBD, something like what, so I guess 4% THC, 1% CBD, take that to 16% THC, 4% CBD. That's kind of, I think, where we're going more into mixing CBDs and auto flower is, I think, going to hold more of a market share as well.
Okay, so you mentioned growing. You mentioned a little breeding. And you don't like the state of where the cannabis industry is going or where it's at, what do you grow your cannabis for?
Okay, um, I'm growing for a few different reasons. I'm growing for color, I'm growing for effect, I'm growing for flower time, I'm growing for height. There's a bunch of different reasons that I am growing. Me personally, I'm growing for effect and color, and the rest really doesn't matter. As far as me trying to get into the market, I do understand that there are height limitations, so I'm breeding for, I guess, plants that are 3 feet tall, plants that are 6 feet tall, and plants that are 9 feet tall. Those are the 3 height ranges that I go for. As far as flower time, I have 3 different ranges, like 8 weeks, then the 10 to 12 weeks, then it's say 12 to 14 week strains. For people who want it speedy, people who will deal with a little bit more time, and then people who it doesn't care, I'm just going for the effect. Appearance, flavor, that's another thing. I definitely like the complexity of haze. I like the complexity of kush when it's in your mouth. But I'm also a big fan of some fruit flavors, pineapple, strawberry, so chocolate. Those are things that I'm also going to be breeding for.
So you just mentioned strawberry and you mentioned chocolate, pineapple. What are some of your favorite cannabis flavors?
Oh, shit. Definitely chocolate. Like, I'm sucking for chocolate Thai. I'm really into not necessarily citrus, but more like tropical fruits, pineapples, berries. I'm a little sick of blueberry, but strawberries, raspberry, I'm into things like that. Um, Probably my favorite is anthocyanin. That's the stuff that makes plants turn purple. That flavor is rather unique. I love that flavor probably more than anything.
Sounds like you do know quite a bit about growing, breeding, genetics. Is there anything that you could tell a beginning grower that would help them improve in their growing situation?
Well, I would probably say the best way to get better, I would say, is to pick one thing to get better at and then go from there and then add from there. I think, I guess I can equate this to playing basketball. I know overall you want to be able to dunk on people, shoot 3-pointers, be able to play defense, but trying to put everything together at once, jiu-jitsu the same way. Yeah, you just work on one thing. Work on dribbling. Work on laying the ball up with your left hand or your right hand, whatever. Just work on that. Work on free throws. Just work on shoulder rolls. Just work on arm bars. Just work on trying to trip people. Work on your different leg defenses for jiu-jitsu, your X guard or your butterfly guard. But pick one thing to be good at. If you say, hey, I want to grow this plant tall, then just focus on feeding it the nutrients, not overwatering it, and giving it what it takes to see it through to get that result. Once you've got that done, you can move on to something. Hey, I'd like to top a plant. You can try doing that next. See how that works. Get a few of those under your belt so you have a better idea and understanding of what the limits, the threshold is, and that'll get you better. You want to work on training. You want to work on making your own nutrients. I would say just pick one thing you want to accomplish and work on that and build from there. Might not even get to the beer. It's going pretty good.
Yeah, this is going very well. I'm very surprised, and I think I have a lot of thoughts on this. So I've seen your plants. They look very nice. What do you use as fertilizer?
Well, pretty simple for the most part. I'm using natural farming methods mixed with the soil horizon, mixed with the soil food web, mixed with Jadam. I'm taking principles from all of those and mixing them together to create my inputs. So most of my fertilizers are going to be JMS's, Jadam Microorganism Solutions, JLF, Jadam Liquid Fertilizers, which is basically taking old leaf material, old weeds that you pick from the ground, basically taking a mold from the forest, adding it to water, and letting all of that basically rot away for a couple months. Is good for up to some years. And everything broken down, the hormones, the enzymes, the pigments, the nutrients are all inside that liquid. And that's the anaerobic way. Anaerobic meaning, no air under the surface of the ground. Like that's my, say, 2 to 4 inches underground feeding. And then above ground, I will use a FPJ, perhaps, what you call it, WSC shit. Water soluble calcium, lactobacillus, brown rice vinegar, compost. Those are most of the things that I use. I try to replicate nature for the most part, while keeping in mind all the different soil horizons, all the different life that needs to be present, worms, protozoa, nematodes, all in the ground to have a thriving good soil. Enough of the salicylic, humic, and amino acids are there. That's basically why I go that method. Usually it's in a form that the plants can digest a lot easier, so it doesn't have to spend a lot of energy breaking down its food in order to feed itself. It's in a form that is readily available. Instead of having to sit down and cut your steak with a knife and fork, basically it's in a liquid form. You can drink it like a milkshake. That actually helps to get your plants nutrients faster. It can eat when it wants. And also it's basically in a bed of nutrients at all times. So it can slow eat and be full all the time versus going through a fast famine situation.
Okay, I'm interesting response.
Yeah, I was wordy. Sorry. Next question, please.
So what is the best weed you've ever smoked? And I guess also you can tell me what's the worst thing you've ever smoked.
Okay. The best thing I think I ever smoked, probably high-wise, kick my ass, was it was skunk back when I was in high school. There was 2 particular times that I had this skunk that literally, I guess it's the myrcene in it, what was doing it. Literally after smoking it, I would pass out. The first time I smoked a J of it, I passed out on a basketball court for hours, and my friends basically played like 2 games of full court and left me there in the middle of the summer sun. But then the next day, I let my friend smoke some with me, and he basically passed out, and I had to Yoda carry him home. Yoda Luke Skywalker carry him home on my back. So that was probably the best thing I ever smoked, I guess, as far as THC goes. The purple from the 2000s, that was a flavor ride. I had a Cupia's purple that was all purple, and the anthocyanin in it, that purple flavor, I guess, was what I was really picking up on. I didn't know it at the time, but I loved that weed. It was almost like pop rocks in your mouth. It was an interactive, complex experience.
You seem to want to try it.
Yeah. I agree. I guess the worst thing I ever smoked, I'd have to say some weed that just really didn't get me high. And back in the day when I was in the 9th, 10th grade, that was too numerous to count. So yeah, I guess black market weed from the 90s was the worst thing I ever smoked.
Are there any breeders that you follow, idolize, lurk on?
Lyric. But I guess, like I said, Mr. Soul from Brothers Grimm. I think he's an interesting character, if nothing else. Mean Gene from Freeborn Selections. That's somebody I follow. He's a real cool dude to me. He doesn't really, I guess, talk too much about breeding knowledge, but you can definitely see the passion for weed there and where he was going. His style of it is something I really appreciate. Freeborn Selections. And I would also probably say AK Bean Brains. I've recently discovered him about a year or two ago, and his knowledge of weed, the history, he does a lot of interesting breeding work. A lot of his strains are from the 70s and 60s. So that really fascinates me. How do you preserve things that long? How do you pop seeds that old? That's something that really does fascinate me. So I would say them.
Now, I guess this is the question that I'm most curious about. No pressure, no pressure. So if you could get in a time machine,
Okay.
what would you go back and smoke? If you could.
Okay, time machine. I go back and this is easily the original Haze, like the Haze when it came out in 1976, and Purple Haze from back then, the Haze Brothers. That's something I would definitely want to go back and smoke, and like some Oaxacan, Acapulco Gold, like all the things that I grew up on listening to, Panama Red, Jamaican Red Hairs. That's the stuff of legends when I was growing up.
Oh man, you made me want to get in the time machine. So you gave some advice for a beginner grower. What if somebody who's a little more intermediate? Is there any advice that you could give them for growing?
Okay. So taking intermediate is you probably have at least, I'm going to just go with like 4 grows, 5 grows under your belt. Because I don't think the jump from beginner to intermediate is too much, but the jump from intermediate to advanced is something else. You got to have some concepts under your belt. But if you got a couple grows under your belt, I'd probably say try growing in different mediums. You can try soil, hydro, cocoa core. Like try something like that so you have a different understanding of growth rates and also different requirements of what it takes to keep these plants alive in these different mediums. I would say definitely try some advanced, low to advanced stress techniques, training techniques on plants. I would definitely say at this point try super cropping, low stress training, topping, leaf stripping, defoliation, like the what's the joint? Yeah, super cropping, knuckling it up, defoliation, lollipopping. Those are the things that I'd probably be working on as an intermediate grower. Like almost going 2 notches before you put the plant in a state of stress with your training techniques, like trying different things out, spreading the plant out, popping the inner membrane and getting it to be manipulated in different ways. Scrogging, that's something else. Using a net. Some people who use nets don't ever go back. You're able to spread a plant out that gets 6 feet tall, 6 feet wide, and it gets maximum exposure to the light. Every growing site basically becomes a full bud site. That's something I would say an intermediate grower should be working on, different training techniques and finding out exactly what you can do with these plants. Different strains, going from sativa, try some indicas, and just see the difference in longer flowering plants versus shorter flowering plants.
So, how do you like not? The idea of business is in utopia, whatever you want.
Okay, so pretty much I grow that way now, which I would say my favorite way is outdoors. There's no better light bulb than the sun. There, sorry. No light bulb has been able to replicate the sun. Also, you get to let the plants be all that they can be. They can get as much surface, root space as it needs. You get as much root space as it needs, as much height, and go as high as it wants to go. It's out there getting constant wind, which is strengthening up everything. So outdoors, using natural farming methods, trying to replicate Mother Nature, using the Jadam, KNF, soil food web, and the soil horizon to get it done. Compost, 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 and worms. That's the secret sauce.
Okay, there we go. That's what I was getting at, the secret sauce. What is the way that you like to grow with your cheap base up your sleeves?
Okay. Probably the things I'm probably doing different than nobody else is doing is I have an iguana. I'm using this waste to add into the compost. A big fan of seawater, fermented seawater, diluted seawater. I think that adds an extra kind of complexity to the plants. It's getting all 83 elements, the sulfur, the zinc, the manganese, the different things that you might not necessarily know you're deficient of in your soil. Water soluble calcium is huge because basically the entire structure of a plant, leaves, stalk, and all is basically calcium. So it can never not need calcium. It probably needs more calcium than it needs nitrogen. But right behind it. So I would say those are my 3 secret sauces. Maybe some BioLive, some mycorrhizae as a little boost. But honestly, using the natural farming inputs along with the big part is you have to have the IMO basically 5 in place for all of this to work through its best ability. Once you have that established, yeah, it's smooth sailing. It kind of builds itself, keep adding the wood chips and different compost. And that's really the secret sauce, making a happy, healthy plants. I believe that once you do get the sugar content in the plant high enough, that it does become invisible to pests. So that would be my secret sauce.
Well, I'd like to thank you. I appreciate you for coming. And could you tell us where to find you?
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. No problem. Yeah, sure. I'm Brutal Monkey on pretty much everything on Twitter or X, Rumble, Odyssey. I'm on locals as well. I'm working on that. Definitely on YouTube and Instagram is Brutal Monkey. And thank you. This had me thinking. It was pretty interesting. Yeah, and I still never got to my beer.